This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to DW's Stand Up. If we do not stand up, who will? My sponsor keeps this podcast on the air, and I want to tell you about her, Miss Kim Yeater, Peak Performance Coaching. If you're feeling stuck in any area of your life on a personal or professional level, you just can't move forward, then you need to request a complimentary strategy call with my personal coach, Kim Yeater, at Calendly, CALENDLY.com/Kim Yeater, YEATER. It's okay to be stuck, but it's not okay to stay stuck. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. If we do not stand up for what is right and what we believe we will. To my audience, I want to thank each of you for attending these podcasts each week. I really appreciate you coming back. And today I have a very, very special guest that I want to introduce you to. My special guest today is Dr. Kevin Malone. He is married to Christine Malone, and they have two daughters, Allie and Shannon. Let me tell you a little bit about the doctor. He is board certified in family practice since 1992, recertified in 1989, 1996, 2003, and 2014. And past memberships, California Medical Association, San Diego County Medical Society, American Academy of Family Practice. His military experience, United States Marine Corps, September 1969 to August of 71, honorably discharged as a Lance Corporal. He worked in the emergency room, and that helped him decide on a medical career. His college was Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., graduated cum laude on May of 1975 with a biology major and psychology minor. Dr. Malone has had 4 medical practices, and I want to tell you just briefly about each one. His first medical practice was in a small private group practice in a family medicine with a Chula Vista Medical Clinic. And in July 1982 through June of 1990. His main interests were preventative medicine, sports medicine, and pediatrics. In 1984, he organized and was race director for a new 120K race sponsored by this clinic. His second medical practice was with a large multi-specialty group, Sharp Reed-Seeley Medical Group, from July of 1990 until February of 1994. Now, in February of 1994, he began his third medical practice as director of the Sharp Chula Vista Family Practice Residency Program, serving as medical director of the faculty practice, helping to develop the business plans of the residency, recruiting faculty and staff, completing the accreditation process for the residency, and supervising residents. And finally, on September 20th, 1997, he began his 4th medical practice as owner of Family and Preventative Medicine of Chula Vista. And this involved purchasing his existing practice from Sharp Healthcare. We remained in the same building with the same patient base and employees, in addition to offering additional Western or allopathic medicine care. We developed and offered several Eastern or alternative modalities of medical care. Our initial venture in this area involved acupuncture, herbal therapy, hands-on energy work, and massage. Now, Dr. Malone has an extensive medical career and resume, and I can't even share it all with you. So let me introduce to you, my friends. Help me welcome Dr. Kevin Malone. Good afternoon, Kevin. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very fine. Thank you.
Well, great. I appreciate you coming on with us today. And I want to just go ahead and first thing I want to do is to ask you to tell us about your emergency room work while serving as a Marine, and that helped you make a decision about your career.
Well, when I was serving in the Marines, it didn't take me long to realize that that wasn't going to be a career. So I started thinking about other things to do. And I was at that time, as I was finishing my service, I was serving on Oahu in Hawaii. And I did some volunteer work at Tripler Hospital. And it didn't take me long to realize that looked like a pretty exciting field. And so I decided that I wanted to become a doctor. And so when I started college, I started as a pre-med, and from day one, that's what I wanted to do.
Oh, okay, great, great. Well, thank God for the military. Help
Yes.
guide your life.
Yes, they helped me with the GI Bill, and they taught me how to stay active. This morning I swam a mile and walked 3 miles.
Oh, wonderful. That
It's
is
not bad
wonderful.
for a 70-year-old.
Amen. God is good. God is good. Now, I wanted to ask you another question. Now, with our country in which you've been in medicine, the whole world has been on lockdown in the past year due to COVID. Now, do you think locking down was the best way to handle this pandemic?
Okay, it's always easier after the fact to criticize things, be the Monday morning quarterback. But the example I like to use is thousands of years ago, societies learned how to deal with infectious disease. Take leprosy, for example. They quarantined the sick, not the healthy. So I think it's been a mess. A lot of people have died unnecessarily. In retrospect, I think what should have happened, since it started in our country in New York, is they should have quarantined New York for a month. What happened was everybody left New York, scattered like people leaving a disaster, went to other areas and took the virus with them.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. The country paid a dear price for that.
So the lockdown, you can't go get your hair cut, you can't go to a restaurant, but you can go with hundreds of people to Costco and other big box places. I've flown 4 times in the past year, and one time the plane was completely full. So you can sit on an airplane for hours, shoulder to shoulder, with no problem. But we're supposed to destroy all these small businesses. I think it was disaster in many levels.
Yeah, and I talked about that in the past about the small businesses. So many thousands and upon thousands of small businesses are permanently closed because of the lockdown, and that was totally unnecessary to do that. And I think, one thing I like about the American people, Dr. Malone, is that when you tell people what they need to do, they know how to maneuver and they know how to operate in a safe manner. They don't need the government to tell them. Yeah, you can have some basic guidelines, but people will know how to keep themselves safe, and they'll know how to stay in business in a safe manner and protect their clientele.
Yeah, just take restaurants, for example. If you didn't want to go to the restaurant, fine, stay home. But the people that wanted to go could do so at their own free will and, with precautions. And thousands of small businesses, restaurants would still be alive.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a regret, that something we can never reclaim, because some of them will never open again, and that's very unfortunate. Now, doctors sign, and I've heard this since a child. I'm not nearly not nearly close to being a doctor, but I've always heard the doctors sign a Hippocratic oath. Is that still relevant today?
Well, believe it or not, I did not sign the Hippocratic Oath. I actually looked up some numbers, and 64% of doctors age 65 and older had signed the Hippocratic Oath. Younger doctors, only 39% under age 34 have signed. I didn't have a big issue with it, but my classmates in medical school were very concerned about the abortion issue.
Mhm.
And they felt they couldn't sign the Hippocratic Oath and support abortion. So
Mm.
that's why I and nobody in my class signed the Hippocratic Oath. But obviously, we're not supposed to do harm.
Yeah.
So I think most of the tenets of the Hippocratic Oath are just fine. I personally did not sign it.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm just curious about that. Now, with our country being overrun with illegal immigration, now there are a lot of people being released into the country with COVID. With this affects the health of people, even probably that you treat, because of it will spread throughout the country. And I think, I was just thinking, Kevin, Dr. Malone, I don't know which you prefer, Kevin or Dr. Malone.
Kevin
But
is fine.
okay, but anyway, with people going all over the country now, and with the levels of COVID going down, will this start another pandemic? Will it start it over in some areas where they've had it kind of under control? Is that gonna start up another bout of this COVID?
It certainly looks like that's a possibility. I read a report this morning that said that 10% of the recent waves tested positive for COVID. And
Mhm.
I've seen other reports where some areas it's up to 50%.
Oh my goodness.
And they're shipping them all over the country.
Yeah.
It just boggles the mind how they think that's okay, but yet we have to destroy small business.
Yeah.
It just I cannot conceive of how that's helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why they want the illegals. All populations that are here have realized that the Democrats just want you to be a victim, and the old safe votes like the black votes, those people are shifting in droves over to the conservative side. Same thing with Hispanics. In the past administration with Trump, he got the unemployment down to record low numbers, and so they need new voters. So they're importing them.
Mhm.
I mean, why they're doing it is simple to see, but they can't do it with a straight face and say that they're worried about COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Another thing, Kevin, that we were looking at is sex trafficking, the dealing of drugs. And I know you probably come into that being a physician with the drug overdoses and all those things figure into this. Can you just kind of talk about that a little bit, if you would?
Well, it's just amazing. Huge numbers of these young people are coming in unaccompanied. They're just huge targets for all of that. Stealing their money, sex trafficking, drugs. It just boggles the mind. Sometimes I have to get to the point where I have try not to pay too much attention to it because there's not a whole lot I can do, and it's just so devastating.
Yeah, I know. And another thing is, again, suicide. And I pray for that on a regular basis every day. Pray for those in that mindset who would want to take their lives, and the overdoses with the amount of drugs, because the drug cartels control who's coming into America. And these people are not coming in. They have to pay to come
Yeah.
in here. They're not just fleeing in here. All these thousands of people that we see coming in on a daily basis, they're having to pay the drug cartels to come into America.
And then you mentioned suicide, and a
Yes.
big part of that is they've shut down the school system for
Yeah.
over a year now. even though they say let's go by the science. Well, for months now, the CDC has said it's safe for kids to go back to school.
Yes.
But the teachers' unions are so powerful, and they don't really, their primary objective is not to serve the students, it's to serve the teachers. And it's criminal. These, robbing these students of their education and their camaraderie leads many of the young people to suicide.
Yeah.
It's you probably heard, why they call remote learning,
Mm-hmm.
because the chance of learning anything is remote.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't heard it put that way, but you know what? That makes sense. It makes perfect sense because our children are being isolated. We had prayer at our church this morning, and I was saying to my pastor, we really need to. It would be great if we could get a Christian school at our church, and get as many kids out of the public schools as possible, because I'm very concerned with the curriculum that's being taught, the evil things that are ungodly, to hate the country, and just so many things, and I won't go into detail, like, but you are familiar with that, and that is happening with these children, and they are our future. And
Yes.
we look back at Hitler and Stalin, and we look at all those things, these people, and what they thought about education, and taking the minds of the children. And the earlier and the sooner you take it, then you control them, you control the future. And that's what's so dangerous about making sure that our children have proper education. And if they're patriotic, and if they love God first, if they can't even take their Bibles in school, that's off limits. And this country was founded on the Bible. It started out with the Bible. Again, that was a textbook, but
Right.
yet we can't talk about it today. Yeah. So now, what are the pros and cons of wearing masks? I hear so much up and down, and I even heard that I see little babies with a mask on. And then I heard that, oh, here's one other thing. I heard that they're going to start testing, children. I'm just real concerned about little children wearing masks when I hear that, they don't really transmit so much as far as COVID. Their immune systems are, more.
Well, to begin a conversation about masks, you almost have to start with Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci, in my opinion, has been wrong about everything in his entire career going back to AIDS. But if you listen to Dr. Fauci, originally he said, oh, this virus isn't going to be a problem. You don't have to wear a mask. Now, since then, over the past year, every other week, he has a new proclamation, supposedly based on science, which I think is ridiculous. Now, whether masks help, they probably help a little bit, but it's become ridiculous. Like if you go into a restaurant, you have to wear the mask to go through and sit down at your table. Then you can take the mask off. But if you have to go to the bathroom, you have to put the mask back on to walk to the bathroom. And then you can come back to your table and take it off. But when you leave the restaurant, you got to put it on again to leave. Now, how ridiculous is that?
Yes, it makes no sense at all.
It
Yes.
makes.
Yeah, and I know a particular lady who actually was on a flight to fly home. She had a silver mask, which you can actually breathe through that, and it's safe. But because she had that mask on, they wanted her to double mask, and she refused to double mask. And so she was literally dragged off the airplane, was beat up. And she's not the only one that it's gotten to the point where people are being beat up in stores and restaurants, getting into fights over the mask. And it's just
I think that the main thing about masks are they're trying to control the population. And they tell you this, they tell you that. To me, it's more about control than about safety. They're conditioning us to be little sheep that listen to one voice, the approved voice. You know, if you listen to anything that's not approved, you get canceled, or worse. Professional societies go after people if they don't shut up and just toe the accepted line of conversation.
Yeah, well, now that you say that, that makes it so much easier to understand how it was, how they were able, Castro was able to take over Cuba, and how Chavez was able to take over Venezuela, as well as some of the other dictators. It's so easy to take over people if the people don't have a mind to first seek God. But if they first must do what is right and not just be led astray. It's easy to guide people, and when you cause fear, and I think the mask have caused a lot of fear, and that's like you said, that led to people being under the control of the government or whoever's in charge.
Yeah, I think like children under the age of 10, making them wear a mask is just ridiculous.
I know. Yeah,
We're well on the
no,
way of becoming Venezuela ourselves.
yeah,
Well
and
on the way.
you know what, Kevin? I talk about this every week, and I try to warn people. And I've got people who come on this podcast and warn people about that very thing. And it's a big concern, because we certainly don't want to live, even though we have a lot of stuff going on now that's conditioning us, and people with that mentality that want that kind of power and control. But let me just ask you this now. As a physician, you've run several medical offices. What concerns you about the future of medicine, and how would you fix the healthcare system in America?
All right. That's a whole topic.
That's
And
a
it's,
loaded question.
even though I've been in 4 different situations, I've been in the same community my entire career
Yeah.
since graduating from residency program. It's hard to be certain about anything, but I'm very certain about this coming statement. Nobody's going to ask me to run the system, but if they did, I have strong opinions about how we could improve things. And I have a lot of worries about the future of the healthcare in our nation. For one thing, I myself will be 70 years old this year, and practices like myself will probably not exist in just a very few years. I'm a solo practitioner. I have a nurse practitioner working with me. She's been with me for over 20 years now. But in the future, there's going to be fewer doctors. There's going to be more mid-level care. There's going to be more televisit care. I think that's part of this whole pandemic, is to condition people
Yeah.
that, yeah, you don't really need to see a doctor anymore. You can just do it by video. And by the way, we'll monitor that too.
Mm.
But if I was put in charge, like some people say, well, healthcare is a right. Doesn't say that in the Constitution, but they don't care about the Constitution now anyway. But to me, in the future, if we're going to get people healthy, healthcare needs to be thought of more as a responsibility. Like this is America. So land of the free, home of the brave. If you want to smoke, that's great. That's your freedom. But we know actuarially that your healthcare costs are going to be more. Same thing if you have diabetes, you should be incentivized to get that under control, or even better yet, make it dormant. That's become one of my medical hobbies, is making diabetes dormant. I've done it in many patients. The medicines nowadays are so good, with the cooperation of the patient, it can be done.
Oh, okay.
Same thing with high blood pressure. Nowadays, we should be able to control most patients with high blood pressure, and patients should be incentivized to do the things, taking their medicine, not smoking, minimal alcohol, daily exercise, weight under control, people should be incentivized to take care of their chronic conditions. Because as we age as a population, that's going to become a bigger and bigger burden financially. And the healthy shouldn't have to subsidize the unhealthy.
Yeah. Now, would you
Let-
say that would lead to single payer healthcare or similar?
Well, it could. I have mixed feelings. You know, the government doesn't run anything well, except, you know, maybe space travel, although now that's becoming privatized too, keeping us safe as a nation. But putting the government in control of healthcare, which is at least a fifth of the economy,
Mm.
is just asking for inefficiency. So I would like to see healthcare stay privatized, but incentivize health
Okay.
and disease prevention. That's part of my business name is prevention.
Okay. Okay. That's great. And you know, I have a lot of family members that have diabetes. So and now see, would you say type 2 is the diabetes that you, I know type 1, I mean, you can't control that one, but type 2 is the one that you can bring under control.
Right. When I talk about diabetes, it's mostly type 2. Type 1 is a completely different disease, much more difficult to treat and control. But I would say 80% of the diabetics I see, it's mostly lifestyle driven. And many of these, we could make their diabetes dormant with, again, proper amount of using new medicines. Sometimes I've taken people with severely uncontrolled diabetes, and with these newer medicines, it's a temporary thing. In less than a year, they're not taking any medication. They're eating properly, exercising properly. They have their weight under control. They're not smoking. They're using alcohol moderately. And it's a thrill, an absolute pleasure to help people with diabetes get under control or have them be dormant.
Yeah, that would be great because so many people have type 2, which can be brought under control. And
For example, they say a Hispanic child born today has a 50% chance of becoming type 2 diabetic.
oh, wow. Hmm. That's scary.
And it's mainly avoidable.
Yeah, yeah, that's up to the parents to know and to, you know, make sure that the babies are healthy.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, now being in medical practice, now you've had to hire people. How do you feel about the government setting salaries since you've had to employ people, and what happens when they start setting wages, minimum wages and things like that? I talked about it before, but I want to hear that from you as a doctor and as an employee.
Yeah. It's just another way to control people. As you know, if you raise the minimum wage beyond what the market states, that's just a tenet of socialism. They say, oh, we should have $15 minimum wage. Well, if that happens, millions of people are going to lose their job. I'll give you one example. I recently, within the last week, I flew back from my home state of Minnesota back to California, and I was in the airport hungry, and so there weren't very many options because most of the restaurants were closed, but there was fast food open. Well, if you wanted to order fast food, you ordered it from a kiosk. So employers, in order to stay in business, will cut hours, cut jobs, automate to stay in business. And the only persons that that's going to harm are the lower wage earning people. They're going to be put out of a job. It's, they're saying they're doing this to help the lower income people, but it would actually hurt them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a deliberate effort to get people dependent on the government by getting rid of the lower jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you even need a job? We're just going to send you a check every other month. You
Yeah.
know, $1,400 this month, 600 a couple months ago. Like
Oh,
profession or presidential candidate Yang said, yeah, just put everybody on a guaranteed salary. Why should people have to work?
mm,
The problem is though, if they keep printing money, trillion here, trillion there, we're going to end up like, I don't know if
yeah.
you can see this, but this is a
Yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah.
Ecuadorian, I'm
Mm,
sorry, Venezuelan money, 100
yeah.
cent. You need a wheelbarrow full of this to buy a loaf of bread.
Mm,
Our money right now hasn't collapsed, but if you keep printing $1 trillion every other month,
yeah.
it's a house of cards and it will collapse, just like the housing market collapsed 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because matter of fact, I had a little statistic on here that each American would have to end up paying back $42,000 for the $2 trillion, the trillions that this country owes. People think it's free, but it's not free, and it's
Yeah.
going to come on the backs of every American. And it doesn't matter what where you are as far as how much money you make. They say, oh, people over 400,000 are going to have to raise their taxes. Then they dropped it down to 200. Pretty
Right.
soon, every single American in some way will be impacted by paying higher taxes,
Well,
and that's just
the,
a fact.
the person that makes $400,000 may own a business, and to pay the taxes, he's going to raise his prices on his whatever he sells. So it doesn't hurt the person with $400,000 income. That tax burden gets shifted to the poorer people. So the poorer people are really paying that tax. It's a smoke and mirrors mess. It's like Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is fine until you run out of other people's money.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. Now you think we have a lot of career politicians, Kevin, and you understand because you've run a business. But if you've never run a business before, like so many of the politicians today who are in office, then it's okay to go out and just print money, print money, print money, as though there's no tomorrow, and there's no accountability for it. Now, what happens to these people to think that way? They haven't run a business, so that means they're running a country, and they can go out and spend trillions of dollars, and they don't understand. I'm not a business person, but I understand that you can't just go out and print every time you get into a crunch no, trillions now of dollars. Trillions and was billions, now it's trillions.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Besides being a medical doctor, I also have an MBA. So I understand a little bit about money and finances, and it's ridiculous. The current, leadership, especially in the Democratic Party, none of those people even ran a lemonade stand.
Yeah.
They're 40, 50 years in politics. Besides not even be able to run a business, Biden can't even walk up an airplane ramp.
Yeah. Now you concerned about his health, being a doctor and seeing that happen to him. You
Well,
concerned about his health.
I
I'm
currently
concerned about the country, but
I currently get the New York Post, and he's on the front page of the paper today. I mean, we knew years ago that he wasn't competent to run the country. He's just a shill. I mean, he can't talk, he can't walk, he can't even read a teleprompter. It's in one way it's sad, but in another way it's extremely dangerous.
yeah. Yeah, it is dangerous. I was looking at the conversation he had with Russia and his team had in Alaska with China. China just rolled the United States like a cheap date. They literally were rolling the Biden people. No respect or anything for the leadership of our country. And that should not be for America to be in that position. But we find ourselves in that position. But yeah, and I think the president shouldn't be challenging Vladimir Putin over in Russia, because he's not able to debate that guy. You can't hold a candle to him. And I'm not saying that to be, for people who may look at this and, oh, you're attacking. No, I'm not attacking. It's reality. He has some problems, and yeah, we need to keep him lifted in prayer, but he's in over his head.
He not only is in over his head, but I may get in trouble for saying this, but I don't think he was elected president.
Yeah, I don't either. And
Way,
I may get canceled for saying that, but
way
that's
too much
just my
power.
opinion. Just my opinion.
You look at all the previous states that were in play, like in past elections, like Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, they all went solidly for Trump. But other states with Democratic governors fudged the votes, and that's a reality.
Yeah.
And you can tell they know that's a reality because Washington, D.C. is still behind barbed wire.
Yeah. 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 There's zero accountability. And
I don't condone the riot in the Capitol, but to blame Trump for that is also ridiculous.
Yeah, but Kevin, we look at that what happened. Not one person had a weapon. Now I'm not excusing what they did. The ones who went in there, they should not have gone into that Capitol building. That was wrong. The ones who allowed themselves to be led into there, but there were BLM people with Trump hats and Trump paraphernalia that they were wearing that were not. And there was even one Black Lives Matter gentleman, a young man from, I believe, Utah or somewhere. He was paid $70,000 to go in and say he was a reporter. He literally was paid. I don't know if he was the only one, but that one we know for sure was paid to go in. He incited those people to go into that building, and he was paid money to go in there. And he was seen with as though he were a Trump supporter. That was total. And another thing, Kevin, I've mentioned this before, is that Nancy Pelosi and Mr. Speaker of the House, yeah, they had the authority to call in the National Guard. Matter of fact, and some people may not know, but President Trump ordered 10,000 National Guard. He had ordered that to be on standby for that day. Now, if he offered that, it was not accepted. And yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, they said that they didn't like the optics of that, but what about the optics now? For months, the Capitol is behind barbed wire. It's just another of the well planned out attack against Trump and our country.
Oh yeah, well I think it was all a ploy to bring the impeachment against him.
But to be fair, there were some overzealous Republicans went into the Capitol.
Yeah,
a patient of mine was actually there and came back and told me he didn't enter the Capitol, but he was at the Capitol. And he said there was no resistance. The doors were open and people were just walking in.
Yeah, as though they were open for them to go in. And some of them were being let in.
It was a trap, and there was no weapons.
Yeah.
To call it an insurrection is an abuse of the language.
Yeah, well, that's all a part of the plan as well. And it's a sad plan, but who it hurts America. It hurts our country. And also when I talk, Kevin, on a regular basis about using race, we use this critical race theory. Race theory is being used to divide, cause us to hate each other and stay at each other. Instead of looking at who the real enemy is, Satan, that's who our enemy is of this country. But people are used and they go after each other using race. Everything you hear, and I don't look at, a lot of TV, but when I see people always talking about race and hate, race, said, no, that's not right. Race. It's not about race. We got to stop hating each other.
Take Dr. Martin Luther King, for example. He says, judge me by the quality of my character, not the color of my skin. And now it's completely reversed. They don't care what your qualifications are. Like Governor Newsom says, the next senator he appoints is going to be a Black woman. So everything is, like you said, it's all about race. You didn't hear anything about Asians until recently. But now that's front and center. They're They got to make sure that they stir the pot about racial hate with Asians. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but they don't talk about who it is. For the most part, is young Black men who are attacking Asians, and you're not allowed to say that, but that's just the truth. And matter of fact, Asians themselves say it because it's true. You know, the majority of them are, and I'm a Black woman, but you have to be. Can I sit here and just lie? No, we have to be honest. The truth is, so many of the young Black men are the ones attacking these Asian people, and
Speaking about race a
reality.
little bit, I had taken the Wall Street Journal for over 30 years, but recently I canceled my subscription. And the reason that I told them, you're promoting systemic racism. And I think that's way overused, but when they would have an article and they would talk about a Black person, the B in the Black would be capital. And if they, in the same article, they talk about a white person, the W in the white would be small. And so that's like 1984, inserting racism into the division. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And I just think, you've been a physician. If you said, oh, well, we can't take this color patient, I can only take you if you're this color. What would that make you?
Yeah. And then you probably heard about Columbia University's graduation. They're segregating it in all the different groups by sexual preference and skin color.
Yeah, that's sad. That's so sad. You know, there's not one, and I've said this before, Kevin, not one person walking on this earth has any control over what color they are, what race they are, what they look like. We have no control at all over that. And it's just being used, and people allowing themselves to be used, just like they adopted whiteness. Oh, you gotta, and they're making little white children say, oh, you gotta denounce your whiteness and apologize for being white. I said, wait a minute, how did a person of color, if somebody told me as a Black woman, you gotta denounce being Black. I said, how am I gonna do that? I can't change my color. I can't change my race. God created me the way He wanted me to be. So how can I possibly change that? I can't. No one can.
And not to say horrible things were done in the past.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Any of those people for generations have been oppressed. I mean, we've had a mostly Black president. We have a mostly Black vice president. You know, take Clarence Thomas, probably, if not the best Supreme Court justice of all time, definitely one of the best. And, you know, the Blacks have disowned him, at least the politically correct Blacks. It's ridiculous. The man is brilliant.
Yes, Thomas Sowell is another one that, and he was an atheist. Thomas Sowell, he started out as an atheist, but he is brilliant, and his writings are like phenomenal writings. He's and there are others who are phenomenal people, but if you don't think a certain way, you can't just be an American. You have to be on a certain side. You have to be in a certain party. You have to be Democrat. Let's just state the truth. You have to be Democrat, or else you're canceled.
As you know, in the past, I was a big supporter of Dr. Ben Carson, brilliant man from the depths of poverty. I'm disappointed, and maybe it still will come to be, but he, I think, could have done a lot to bring the races together. I mean, look what he was able to do with where he started out.
Yeah. Yep, you're right. Brilliant man. Brilliant man. Accomplished so much. Now, just that business owners are begging the government about the legislation not to kill jobs for teenagers. Another victim, I go back to the setting of wages, teenagers will be affected. Some of them, working for the very first time, like you say, Kevin, you bring in the kiosks, you kill jobs, and it's our young people when they're coming out of middle school who are going to be looking for work, and you're not going to be able to find it.
Right.
because it's, that's their first job. And, I look back to your first job, it's exciting. Oh, I'm going to go out and get a job. And guess what? It's not going to be there. So many are not going to be there. Yes.
I totally agree. I mean, I was 14 years old when I first started working,
Mm-hmm.
or I think it was 95 cents an hour. And I was tickled pink to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I bought my first car same week I turned 16 with my own money.
Yeah, I know. We don't teach kids that now because there's so many of them. They just, it's a different world. Yeah, it's a whole different world now. I want to talk about if we're talking about money, the $1.9 trillion budget that was passed. Every Democrat voted for it, and I don't believe any Republicans voted for that. They call it the American Rescue Plan. I mentioned this before, but it's not that at all, because only 9% of that money went, the $1,400 for each American in a certain wage earner. I think it's like if you make under $150,000 as a couple, or $75,000 individual, then they'll send you a check for $1,400. So that's
Well,
not.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I think that the name of the bill was completely appropriate.
Yeah.
It was a rescue plan for badly managed blue cities and states.
Yes.
That's where
Yeah.
all the money is going to.
Yeah.
All these cities with pensions,
I know.
billions. It's to bail out these cities so that they can stay in power.
Yeah. Yep. So all the states that do budget, they balance their checkbooks, and now they'll have to pay to bail out the states who just spend without even thinking about it. And we even talk about climate, because that would be trillions more if we just like they got us back in the Paris Peace Accord. And I bring these things up for education reasons, but the Paris Peace Accord, that didn't do us any good. President Trump took us out of that. Being a part of the World Health Organization, that didn't do anything for America. And killing the Keystone Pipeline, all that did was shifted those jobs over to all these other countries, and now they're drilling oil. And look at the price of gas here in the United States. It's going through the roof, and it's going to keep going through the roof.
I just bought gas this morning, $4.30 a gallon for the cheapest blend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the Democrats a few years ago said, well, we want Americans to be paying $6 a gallon of gas. And they really want us in electric cars. But I think that freeze that they had in Texas and across the South should prove to them that you cannot depend on solar and wind.
You can't prove anything to a liberal. They decide everything about their emotion. How does it make them feel? I mean, I have a close friend that's liberal, and we've mostly maintained our friendship, but you can talk yourself blue in the face with numbers and facts, but they don't conceive of that. It's just, how does it make them feel?
Yeah.
Just think of these poor families in other countries. They want to come to America to have the good life. Everybody in the whole world should be able to come to America and have good life. Well, the fact that that's not possible as an economic tenant doesn't make any difference to them.
Yeah, well, I heard Nancy Pelosi telling people that, to come to America. I said, well, who's going to take care of people when they get here? Because America's not going to, we're going to go belly up if they keep spending the way we're already in big trouble, not to mention money we owe more than what they are borrowing. It's so many trees. We can't even put a number behind the amount of debt that this country is in.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi and all those others have walls around their homes, but walls around our country don't work.
Yeah, I know.
And then you have hypocrites like John Kerry flies to Iceland on his own private jet to accept a Save the Planet award. And then you see him last week flying commercial now because he got busted on flying the private jet, but he's an elite, so he doesn't have to wear a mask.
Yeah, I saw that.
They're just hypocrite.
Yeah, your picture went away, Kevin. But anyway, what's for you is not for me. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we've got to get ready to wrap it up. But Kevin, would you give any final comments? We can't see your picture, but go ahead and share any final comments with us, if you would. If you want people to contact you, your medical practice, or whatever you want to share, go ahead and share that with us.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
So my battery went low, but I plugged my iPad in, and
there you are.
okay, so now I have enough electricity. Okay. Final comments. We're in deep trouble, but we should not give up. We should not surrender. Sometimes we don't understand God's plan, but somehow, I think somehow it's going to be better. Look what Obama gave us. He gave us Trump. So what's Biden going to give us? Hopefully we can make our elections fair.
Yeah.
I have serious doubts about that, but hopefully things will get better. We all need to do our own part. I don't like too much to speak publicly about things, but I have enjoyed our conversation, and I'll look forward to seeing you in other social settings. And so I don't know if you have any further questions for me.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if you wanted people to know how to contact you, or they can just Google your name and find you. Dr.
Well,
Kevin.
I can give my email address.
Okay, sure. Go ahead and share your email address, and then they'll know how to contact you.
Okay, it's Kevin, Kevin, which is my middle initial, Malone, Malone. So again, Kevin A. Malone at msn.com.
MSN?
Correct.
Okay, that's great. So someone may want to get a hold of you. And I want to thank you for coming and sharing. I know we've been all over the spectrum of discussions, and I thank you that you're well versed in everything. But thank you for sharing your medical tips, and especially about diabetes and being able to help people with diabetes and blood pressure. Those are critical things. I'm glad you brought that up, that you know help so many people with that. And but anyway, I appreciate you coming, and I want to thank my audience, those of you who come each week and you listen to these podcasts. I don't take it for granted, and I know we don't agree on everything, and we're not going to agree on everything, but we can agree to disagree. And by the grace of God, we come here to share the truth. And yes, we're all entitled to this great American experience, and I'm thankful for that. And continue to watch and listen. You can reach me on dwsview@gmail.com, dwsviewstandup@gmail.com. And friends, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. And hit the red button so you'll be notified when my podcasts come out. And I would love to have you be a sponsor at this podcast. I would love to have you be a sponsor. And share this message with your friends when it comes out. And lastly, stand up for what you believe, dear friends, but mostly seek God first. And then you stand up for what's right. Because guess what? If we do not stand up for what is right, if we don't stand up,